Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Guy in His Garage. My name's Cam. And we're gonna finally get started on a project that you guys have seen previously in a video, but I think it was all the way back in June. Actually, it was even before that. I think it was all the way back in April when we actually picked this thing up. But before we get into that, I'm gonna be honest, I was planning on giving you guys more insulating and plywood content, but based on how those videos are doing, clearly you guys prefer the turning wrenches than the time lapse on me just cutting insulation and plywood and screwing it to a steel frame building. So before we get into it, I do want to let you guys know we are now also on Instagram, so go find Guy in His Garage 2025 on Instagram. Give us a follow. The plan is to try to use that to give you guys some in-between content, short videos, more pictures, some stories, just kind of give you guys some behind-the-scenes type stuff while we can. So let's get into the project. As you guys can see, I finally dragged our 1972, I believe. I gotta find the serial number and double check. I'm sure I'm wrong and somebody in the comments will correct me. That's how it goes. But it's a Cub Cadet 154 lowboy. And when I picked this machine up, it did run, which I don't think I explained that in the first video. This is a running machine. The issue, like I went over in that video, one of our final drives is pretty well cracked in half. So the goal for just today, not necessarily this video, is to get it jacked up, get it at the rear end on jack stands, get this tire off, and kind of assess the full damage of our final drive. Start by taking our lug nuts off. Actually, let's get it jacked up. You guys can probably see all this water here on the ground. You're probably wondering what that's from, and that's actually from the inside of our tire. So, yay. All right, open up that one. And I hope it comes like that. Yeah, buddy. I don't know, can you guys tell what the problem here is? Because I don't think that big crack should be there. What about you? Alright. I think it'd probably be smart, if it's not hard, to take our fender off so we can get full access to this. So, if I'm being completely honest, guys, the only thing that looks like that's holding up our final drive right now are these two bolts that are part of this bracket. There's nothing else attached to this. So I think what I'm gonna do for simplicity reasons is I'm gonna undo these two and get the rest of our broken assembly off, so that then we can figure out what we gotta do to get the rest of the assembly that's still attached to the tractor off of it. So we're gonna undo these two bolts right here. Okay, let's try to get that off there without dropping it on my fingers. And just like that. All right. I'm gonna pop this cover off. Those are either 9/16 or 1/2 inch. Luckily, everything on this tractor so far. Got the one there, and we got the one right here. Yeah, totally wanted that to drop right into the water. Okay, so if we get this other one off, then this bearing will come out of there. There we go. So now this bearing, let's try not to break our picks here. In theory, just come off of our shaft here. There's the spline gears. If I'm being honest with you guys, I'm not really sure what our next step here is. There's a linkage over here, so we'll disconnect that linkage, and then in all honesty, I think I'm gonna unbolt these housing bolts here and see if we can get this to come off. I'm not exactly sure. If I'm being completely honest, how this all comes apart. You know, so we're all kind of learning together on this one. All right, let's go ahead and get this cotter pin out of here. Something tells me that's going to be seized in there, so let's grab some BB blaster. Put that. Oh, we just ran out of propane, so yay. Yeah, and that just kind of did something I didn't want it to do, but we'll have to deal with that later. I'm pretty sure it has to do with our brake or our clutch.
You guys ever fight with a bolt that you can literally only get it to go half a turn at a time because it's just in such a tight spot? Yeah. Those are the bolts we love. Those just make us love engineers, don't they? Gotta love a good engineer. Okay, in reality, all that's holding that on there is one more bolt. I mean, I guess it makes sense because then it allows the final drive to bolt into the frame, but at the same time, then you can't replace a final drive without dropping the whole rear end out of the tractor, which was not something I was looking to do. Huh. Well, this just got a whole lot more interesting. Okay, guys, so it's actually been, you know, I really hate the lights that I put up because no matter what I do, we always get those line things. Maybe in the next shop, we'll use some better lights so we won't get that. But anyways, back to what I was saying. I'm sure this thing looks a little bit different than the last bit of footage you guys saw, and I apologize. Most of what I did was I took our two fenders, the ones there, the other ones there, they bolt onto this bracket, which bolts on to these right here, and then that little piece is our center cover here. So I took all that off because we have to be able to get to this filter housing bolts, which are down in here. We have to disconnect our filter housing. We have to pretty much take our whole upper arms of our 3-point hitch system off. We have to take this plate off. We have to get to what holds our PTO shaft and loosen it. And then what we have to do is further down in here, there's 2 bolts that hold the rear end into the frame. So then what we'll do is we will disconnect our rear end. The other thing we have to do is we have to undo these 2 bolts from the top side of our final drives because it goes through the frame and into our final drive into the rear end. So we have to undo these 2, those 2 in the front on the bottom. Obviously we'll put a jack underneath our rear end here, and what we'll do is we'll undo those last 2 bolts, undo these bolts, and then it should come down a little bit and pull back. I'm gonna try to show you guys as much of this process as possible because I actually tried to find somebody else's video on YouTube on doing this because, again, you know, I've never done it. And I only found one video, and the guy doesn't even show him really doing any of it. He just kind of points and says, you know, undo this, undo this, undo this. And then in the next clip of footage, he has the rear end pulled back. So I'm going to try to show you guys as much of it as possible. I figured stripping it down, you know, taking the fenders off the body panels, I figured most of you guys can figure that out and it wasn't a big deal. But that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to try to get our rear end out and try to get this last piece of our final drive sitting here off the tractor, and then we can maybe start prepping her to go back together. Okay guys, so before we go any further, what I want to do to be able to get the jack underneath the rear end is I want to take this assembly off. Now this assembly is actually supposed to be bolted to our final drive, so obviously on this side of the tractor where our final drive broke off, it's still attached to it. But we're going to undo these 2 bolts, and then this assembly will come off. This is for our pulleys to change the direction of the drive belt that is driven off of our PTO to be able to drive a mower deck, which I do have. It's just in pretty rough shape. But we're gonna go ahead, get these undone. And then right up here is our small oil line that we gotta undo from our rear end. Now, unfortunately, you guys probably can tell when I tried to drive that pin out, we ended up bending. There's another one over here. So instead of trying to drive that pin out, I'm gonna undo this cotter pin and push this pin out up over here. And then I'll end up trying to see if I can order another one of these, or if I can find one somewhere, or maybe we'll just heat it up and fix it and whatever. And then I'm pretty sure that the 2 bolts up front that we have to take care of is this bolt and this bolt, because this is a cross member that's actually welded into place. Now I don't know if it's supposed to be welded or if that's somebody else did or what, but we'll undo these. We already have the 2 on our driver's side final drives unbolted, and we got to do the 2 on the passenger side of the tractor. And then I'm not too sure what else down here we have to undo, but that's what we're doing. Did anybody ask for chocolate milk? Yeah, I don't think our transmission fluid's supposed to look like that. That's milky. Well, I guess while that drains, we can focus on taking that cotter pin on our other brake arm on the other side off. Okay guys, so while that still drains and we've got everything but those 2 main bolts undone on the bottom side of our rear end, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and start stripping our 3-point hitch system off the back here. That way there it's easier to see the frame and everything else. Let's get to it.
A pretty spot on the mountainside that overlooks the valley low and wide. He sits her down on an old birch log and starts talking that sugar talk. Well, he's gonna play him a hillbilly song.
Okay guys, so we obviously got that main bracket piece. I went over our PTO shaft and provided the areas for the fenders and the seat bracketing and all that. So there's 1, 2, 3 bolts on this side. Then you come over here, same thing on this side. Now on this side, there's a plate, this plate here, that makes it a bit harder to get to the middle bolt and the front bolt. But if you got a long enough wrench, you should be able to get to it without having to take that plate off. I would suggest if your bolts, there's 2 bolts that hold that plate onto that bracket. If they're not rusted like mine are, I'll just take it off. Makes it a lot easier to get to it. And then there was 1 bolt on through the top of it that bolts it down to the frame. That's a bolt with a nut. The frame's not threaded, unlike on the side here. So the next thing is I'm going to take this plate off, and then from my understanding, if we undo this bolt and this bolt, that should release our PTO shaft from our rear end here. And then all that's holding it in is, like I said earlier, is this bolt, and then we have the 2 front bolts on the bottom, and then our rear end should be ready to slide back. Okay guys, I wasn't gonna do this, but with how milky this fluid is that's coming out of here, I want to actually pull this cover off. And when you pull any type of differential cover, tractors, trucks, cars, whatever, always make sure that the fill plug comes out. If the fill plug doesn't come out, don't undo your cover bolts. Something I don't like, yeah, see, we got water dripping out right there. Straight up water. What I don't understand is why there's all these washers. I don't know if there was original spacers or something on these, or if these are the wrong bolts. But most of these do have what look like the same color paint. So I'm assuming these are factory bolts. Probably gonna need that. Probably we're not having this. Now, because I'm not as worried about it sealing up here, I'm gonna start up top. So if we do accidentally damage it, it's up top. Oh yeah, that is just delicious. Yeah, guys, the fluid shouldn't look like that. There's been a lot of water. Now, luckily, because of how much oil was still in here, it doesn't look like anything is too rusty. And when I can, I'll spin everything and look at it. But generally speaking, no wonder why there were some big chunks of freaking sealant in here. Yeah, I don't know, guys. This is pretty disgusting. I'm gonna spend some time here and clean this all up. Looks like whoever RTV'd this didn't fully clean the old gasket up, and you can see that some of the housing itself broke. So when we go to RTV this, we got to make sure on those sides specifically we get a good amount of RTV and really let it sit before we refill this thing. But I'm going to get this all cleaned up and bring you guys back. Okay guys, we're to the point where the only thing holding this rear end in is these last two bolts. We do have the jack stand underneath it, but now that I'm looking at it, I think I'm going to lower it and readjust it here a little bit. Put a little pressure on it. Now, one more bolt that I wasn't aware of. That I'll show you guys here in a little bit. I'll show you the transmission. That probably where we see a little bit better. Greasy. I like it greasy. Wow. Let's not pinch the crap out of my thumb here. That felt good. Moves light to get it out of way, still puts it in way. Gotta love it. All right, I don't think that thing is something tells me here that we're missing something, but there's another bolt up here, guys. I wasn't sure about this one, but right now it feels like a lot of our tension is on that bolt. Wow, that's a short little guy. All right. Well, the rear end has come down, but not enough. Come out of there. It's not hung up on that. I'm worried it's still hung up on this bolt, but this bolt don't feel like it was coming out. Oh, it's definitely coming out now. Yeah. Now my concern is we're not well balanced. So I'm actually gonna take a jack stand. Lower her down. Gotta get this last bolt out. For whatever reason, don't want to come out. I really don't like doing this, but sometimes the only way to win is to do things you don't like to do. Now, if I'm being completely honest, guys, I am actually worried that the transmission, aka our rear end, is just gonna fall and land on my arm. Now, I do have a jack stand on this side, so if anything, it'll roll over to that side. Yep, that took care of that. So now we should be able to come down. However, that should be far enough out that we can get this final drive out. So we'll just go around lightly. Hey, look at that. We officially have it far enough apart to where I can get in here, really clean all this out pretty decent. And then clean up our gasket surface. And then I got a couple final drive housings actually over in the corner. You guys might have seen them in some of the other videos that I have. Now they're not off Cub Cadet low boys, however they're off of, I know one of them is off a Farmall Cub, and then the other set I'm honestly not sure what they're off of, but I'm pretty sure, no, excuse me, for whatever reason I'm quite burpy, guys. I don't know what's going on there, but one of those two sets should work. I'm not worried about the other side. The other side looks pretty good. I don't see any cracking or anything like that in the housing. And really, my goal isn't necessarily to make this thing perfect and functional right now. My goal is to get this final drive back together. Try to do something with those rear tires. I don't know what I'm going to do yet about those. But I want to at least get this thing to where it's a rolling chassis. So it's a lot easier to move around. So that when I do get the time to actually pretty much almost do a full resto on this thing, we're starting off with a functioning tractor. But if you guys like this type of content, stick around. If you don't mind, go down, hit that subscribe button, maybe even hit the thumbs up button. It doesn't cost you guys a dime, and it does a lot of good for the channel, and I really appreciate it. Again, Happy New Year's. I hope 2026 treats y'all great. And as always, this is Guy in His Garage. My name's Cam. Catch you on the next one. Later.